Dear listeners, Conversaciones is back and we are going to talk about eggs. I recorded this episode a few months ago and it's finally hatching. We talked with American writer Lizzie Stark, author of 3 books, including her latest one published in 2024, Egg, A Dozen Overtures. At first, you wouldn't think there are too many things to say about eggs, but the egg is the universe itself. No wonder why there's something called the cosmic egg, which is also the title of this book's first chapter. She explains how the egg has been used by most human civilizations as a symbol for the origins of the world, or been assigned supernatural powers in rituals such as the limpias we practice in Latin America. I quote from Lizzie's book, open quote, "As these religious loopholes show, an egg is a contradiction. It is meat and not meat. It is alive but not quite living. It has ubiquitous but not well known, at least in the United States, mythic origin story. It is an object of magic, mysticism, religious fervor, of utmost seriousness, as well as humor." This is Conversaciones, a podcast about food beyond the dishes. Here, we talk about culture, about health, about decision making, about immigration, and the human stories behind the things that we eat. Welcome to my conversación with Lizzie Stark. Thank you for being here in the podcast with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
It was really, and I've told you that it was really very fun reading for me. I found myself laughing at several passages, and it was a crazy road for me because I discovered so many things that I had no idea about eggs.
Yeah, it was really fun doing the reporting because eggs are everywhere and but we just don't really think about them at all. And since they're so plentiful, they've popped up in a lot of unexpected spots. Like I guess I knew that if you have an egg allergy, it makes getting the flu vaccine complicated. But I'd kind of forgotten. I was surprised to learn that most governments have, chickens being reared in undisclosed locations to protect the nation's flu vaccine supply and supply of other kinds of vaccines as well. I love just the idea of, men with guns protecting chickens or like just an undisclosed location and what's there? Chickens.
Yeah, and for vaccines.
And for vaccines.
Yeah. Well, that is, exactly the kind of things that I was very surprised at learning. I am a little bit ashamed of sharing this, but it illustrates how much of a discovery this book was for me. Of course, being very ignorant, as probably many other men, I didn't know that females, including human females, have their specific number of eggs already counted. And I told this to my wife, like I was discovering something very new for me, and she was like, "Yeah." It's like, how didn't you know this? I felt really bad, and then I told this. I was talking about the book with a friend, and he was like, "Really? There is," and you talk about that. There's a lot of ignorance about eggs and like a disregard for this that is very core for our humanity.
Yeah, there's a viral TikTok hit right now that kind of sums things up, and the chorus of it is, "We've never really studied the female body," and that's, I think, a large part of that. One of the things that I find the most mind-blowing about women being born with a, with their egg cells already forming in their ovaries, is that this means that when a person gets pregnant um, with a girl baby, you are literally also giving birth to your own potential grandchildren.
Hmm.
I read
Wow.
that somewhere and it just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. It's impressive. It's incredible, and it is. I mean, so sad that there's so much ignorance around that. And you're right. I remember listening a few weeks ago to an interview Trevor Noah did to Halle Berry about menopause, and how menopause is one of those things that there are a lot of myths around that, and that a lot of women lives can be changed if we knew more about that.
Yes, yeah, there's a menopause revolution happening now. I think as um, people in like currently in menopause, I want to say something generational, but I don't feel completely confident in it, but
Mhm.
like Gen X women have changed the discussion about menopause. You can get hormones now through like online subscription services. Um, I share just the abject anger, though, about science not having studied a condition that affects everyone with ovaries. I am in surgical menopause. I had my ovaries removed to prevent ovarian cancer in my family tree, and
Mhm.
there's just really not a lot of good information on it. I'm on a bunch of hormones. Most recently, and this is like the peak of my irritation,
Hmm.
I have been prescribed testosterone because apparently the ovaries produce more testosterone than estrogen.
Huh.
And so if your ovaries go away, your body also is not getting the testosterone. So I'm on a
Uh-huh.
really low dose. It's supposed to help with brain fog, and libido and some other issues. However, I have to take it off label because it has not been studied in women. And because it has not been studied in women, when I get my dosage is packaged uh, like for a man.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I get one tube, and I think
Yeah.
that if you're a man using testosterone supplementation, you use like the whole tube, and I'm supposed to take the tube in 10 equal doses.
Oh wow. How do you just wait it, I guess?
I'm just guessing. My doctor told me to use my littlest measuring spoon and do a
Hmm.
bit less than that, but like a bunch gets stuck in the little measuring tube, and
Hmm.
somehow doing that I used 2 months of testosterone in 1 month, my first month trying this. So now I'm just doing a pea-sized dab or so
Okay.
and just
Hmm.
hoping that that's about correct.
Wow.
Um
Wow. It's a huge impact, and actually I think that you of course you talk about your treatment in the book,
yeah.
and you talk about how having your ovaries removed changed a lot of things
Yeah.
in your own body, as you were mentioning here. And it's also, very interesting, I guess, or particular, that um, something and that is so essential for life itself, like the egg and the system that produces the egg, is so understudied. So,
Yeah.
in your book, did you find why this was?
Um, I would say the reason why it is sexism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just just a blanket statement there. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, sexism, and the fact that for most of the time that we've had medical science, the people who've been doing the medical science don't have ovaries. Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's was shocking to read, I think it was in the maybe this sometime between the 40s and the 60s when hormone therapy first became available. I found a newspaper clipping on it in the New York Times, and the doctor opining on it discussed menopause as, he was basically like, women after the age of childbearing, they've fulfilled their biological duty and they're just dried up seed pods waiting to be blown away by the wind.
Oh
Um,
man. And
that's not
this was
like,
published on the New York Times.
yeah, that was like the prevailing view. So, having fulfilled my destiny as a seed pod.
Mm. Yeah.
But I mean, it kind of gets to the perception.
Hmm.
Why would you do science on somebody who's just shriveled up and awaiting death?
Oh, that
You know?
and yeah, no, it's that that is it's insane. Do you think that things have changed, uh, or how far have things changed to compared to today?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens now that grant applications with the word woman in them are being
Hmm.
turned down. A lot of people I know in the women's medicine field are quite worried about what though that kind of censorship is going to mean
Yeah.
for women's health. Um, so I think it was changing. Who knows what the future is going to hold on that front? But certainly, women are criminally understudied. It's like the structure of the clitoris was not discovered until the 90s.
Hmm.
Um, and it looks like nothing I'd ever imagined. It's like a
Hmm.
donut with wings, and the donut goes around the vagina, and the
Hmm.
wings are kind of out to the side. I still don't understand it fully, but I mean, that's just medical sexism that it wasn't
Hmm.
discovered until the 1990s,
That's
right?
yeah. That's
Um,
insane.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if any of your listeners haven't looked it up, like Google it. It's just fascinating to know what the internal structure looks like. Um, and it's knowledge, you could take to the bank with your partner or yourself, depending.
In the introduction, I talked a little bit about the cosmic egg and like
Hmm.
how this concept um, is one of those concepts that I was also ignorant about, just like what I confessed a few minutes ago. You also said that you didn't know about the cosmic egg, and you asked people around in your family, your relatives, and nobody knew about the cosmic egg.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's pretty wild. Like I know a lot of people who love stories.
hmm,
So I was surprised. But it's a common motif in world myth. The motif is the egg that gives birth to the world, and it's astonishing just how many cultures it is present in. It's in Tahitian world myth, it's in Finnish world myth. I found it in the Dogon myths of
hmm,
the escarpment that kind of runs down the middle of Mali. Um, yeah, it was shocking to me that it's such a common motif that mythologists have named it.
hmm,
And it's a testament to how primal a symbol the egg is. It kind of makes sense because when I was doing my research, I, of course, looked to see how long humans have been eating eggs. And I learned that we have always eaten eggs, that eating eggs predates the written record, and that, in fact, a lot of other animals also eat eggs. Apparently, one of the reasons that the Easter Bunny might exist as a figure in mythology is that bunnies will totally eat an egg if they find one on the ground.
oh wow.
So will deer. And so there's some speculation, of course, in springtime, all the new animals are being born. And like, if you have bunnies in your neighborhood,
Hmm.
you will see a lot of bunnies in the springtime. But I was sort of shocked to learn that bunnies would eat an egg because I think of them as, little grass nibblers, but like
Yeah.
bunnies want protein too, and they will get it if they
That's
have the
that.
chance.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Fascinating. Actually, I wanted also to talk about Easter and how the concept of cosmic egg can be connected to Easter eggs. This one of the your chapters titled Pisanki. You talk about this very ancient Ukrainian tradition that actually evolved into many other things, like culturally and artistically, and even the famous Fabergé eggs come from those Pisanki eggs. Um, how did the egg become so uh, culturally relevant for across so many societies? Because, as you were saying, it's not only in specific cultures, but it's like across the board. Everybody has a
Yeah.
place, special place for eggs.
So this is old pagan stuff, I think, from all over the world. Basically, birds lay their eggs in response to changes in light, seasonal changes in light. So birds lay more eggs in the springtime. That is when eggs are around. That's when, back in the day when people were eating wild eggs, they would go out and gather their wild eggs, hunt for their wild eggs. And in domesticated chicken land, where the chickens are laying a lot more eggs because chickens, unlike every other bird, will also lay unfertilized eggs as well as fertilized eggs. So you had this kind of bounty of eggs appearing, one a day. The modern layers can lay one a day, and it probably wasn't quite that many but you end up with a lot of eggs. And the eggs, spiritually, they're connected to the coming of life again in the spring. They're like a very visible sign of that.
Mm-hmm.
The egg has this interesting betwixt and betweenness. It's not dead, but it's not alive either, but life can come from it. Um, so there's that kind of spiritual resonance. And then also, when you have a big pile of food and you're a subsistence farmer, you've got to figure out how to keep that food good
Mm-hmm.
without
Mm-hmm.
a refrigerator. So people developed all kinds of methods. They were pickling eggs with lye ash in China to make the century eggs that people still enjoy today. You might coat them with vegetable wax as a way of sealing off the pores from the air, or put them in water glass. Um, but a lot of people dipped them in beeswax. And once you're doing that, there were no iPhones. So maybe you scratch a little design into it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're putting a design into it, you might as well make it cute. You might as well use it with you might as well use different colors, or you might as well inscribe something meaningful on it. And I think that is where the tradition of colored eggs come from.
Wow.
Also, if you're preserving a lot of eggs, it makes sense to hard boil a bunch of them because those will stay good for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I think that's where the original tradition came from. And you have it in many different places. There are red eggs from China that are considered lucky. They might be given to a kid on their first day of school. In Persia, there's eggs are part of the like ceremonial displays related to weddings and related to Nowruz, which I
Mm-hmm.
might be pronouncing wrong. But that's like a spring celebration. At Persian weddings, they represent like fertility and new life, and you get these eggs that are like encrusted with pearls and gold
Wow.
beads and like really, really fancy. And then in
Wow.
Ukraine, you get writing where people use a tiny little funnel and they write with beeswax on the surface of the egg. Traditionally, it was not a blown egg, but a fresh egg. Um, and then they started dipping the eggs in dye and using this batik resistance process. So you
Mm-hmm.
start with a white egg, you draw with beeswax on it. What you draw, what is under the wax will stay white, and then you put
Mm-hmm.
it in yellow.
Hmm.
And then when you take it out of the yellow, you wax what you want to remain yellow, and you go on and on. And then at the end, you melt all the wax off, and you have these beautiful, intricate designs that go back to that, well predate
Mm-hmm.
Christianity in Ukraine.
Wow.
And there's similar but not the same egg traditions all over Eastern Europe. People used to take the insides of reeds and kind of smooth them out to make something that looks sort of like ribbon and then glue that in decorations onto
Hmm.
eggs. You get all kinds of uh, like fertility type stuff that happens with them, you
You
know?
would say that the main theme for those decorations would be fertility, or which are the main themes that
I
are
would say
portrayed there?
the main themes were agriculture. You
Uh-huh.
get like rakes, you get sheaves of wheat, vines, windmills, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, eggs replaced animal sacrifice in a lot of situations.
Uh,
So that people think that this is where the tradition of, say, rolling an egg came from.
mm,
You roll the egg through the fields with a spoon, and it's symbolically fertilizing the fields with something
mm,
that could give new life. Or people would bury the eggs in building foundations, possibly in place of a animal sacrifice.
hmm,
And they would be kept on tables and stuff. There was this idea that if you had decorated eggs out, they could help stave off evil spirits.
mm-hmm.
And they were like eggs the world over. They were used in like magic spells.
Mm-hmm.
There was this idea that you could take the eggshell of Pisanki and wash your face with with water held in it, and that would like cure your freckles.
Ah.
Or you'd wear one around your neck, and that might cure your epilepsy. And there's
Uh-huh.
still active magical traditions that use like an egg to cleanse people or draw sickness out in
Uh-huh.
some way. And then when Christianity moved in, what it did was it just said, hey guys, this totally pagan thing that you've been doing for generations, guess what? Is Christian now. um, right? Which is also the same thing that Christianity did with Saturnalia, which used to be the
Mm-hmm.
big celebration, the big solstice celebration.
Yeah.
And then now we celebrate Jesus's birth
Yeah. Yeah.
then as well. So same thing, Christian syncretism.
Uh-huh.
Um, and but it does feel like a very like primal ritual that is
Yeah.
observed every spring. I know I'm going to be hiding eggs for my kid on Easter Sunday.
Okay, you're already
Hmm.
preparing for.
Oh yeah, where there's going to be an outdoor egg hunt, and the Easter Bunny brings chocolates and a little toy. One year, the Easter Bunny brought a Thanos gauntlet, which was hotly anticipated by certain members of my household.
Okay, wow, wow. The Eastern Bunny also, updates its gifts with the time, of
Yes,
course.
of course, of course.
You also mentioned, and I guess that one of the reasons you know so much about the process is because you yourself tried to make a pisanki with your mom,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and you said that it stink.
Oh yeah. Yes. Well, like it's really hard. You watch some tutorials on the internet and it just looks so easy. You like pencil your egg into quadrants, and then
Mm-hmm.
you just draw these lines. But it's really tricky to draw on a curved surface, first of all. I'm not that good at drawing on a flat surface, but drawing on a curved surface, extra level of difficulty. And even then, it would be one thing to draw on a sphere, but an
Mm-hmm.
egg is not a sphere. And so, like, it's hard to make it look exact
Right.
because the lines actually aren't evenly spaced when you do that. And so my mom and I, we made all of these Pisanki together. And then I moved. And I, of course, had wanted to make them the traditional way. So I left the eggs whole. And when I moved, they got put in some box. And we moved
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the summer. And the box, the hot box, was sitting on the porch. And eventually I noticed that, like, my porch wasn't smelling that good. Um, Yeah, and then I opened the box and I got out my carton of Pisanki, and some of them had exploded, and you could kind of see that. I think in the ideal situation, you have the
Uh-huh.
intact egg, and then you set it somewhere where air can circulate around it, and so the
Yeah.
moisture kind of dries out over time.
Yeah.
I had heard that, if they break, it's just a little bit of a smell. But um, I think because my mom and I were inexperienced, so you have all that wax on there from doing the wax resistance method. And then you take a candle and you hold the egg over a candle to get the wax to melt and
Ah.
you buff it off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'd had let the eggs get too hot. So they had this like cooked layer of white close to the shell. And then when they exploded, bottle flies had found them. So there were like maggots and it was green. And the smell
Oh.
really like lingered. It really, really,
No.
yeah. My porch smelled like rotten eggs for a good 2-3 weeks, even after yeah. Um,
Well, you had
Most
your
unpleasant.
experience. Yeah, you
Yes.
had your experience
Yes.
with it. You learn how it can go wrong.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But they were really fun to make. Like I recommend
Hmm.
it to anybody who's willing to, buy eggs at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, my local craft store has all the supplies you'd need for about $10.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
so it's very affordable, and there are plenty of YouTube
Yeah.
videos.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
because you made it following a YouTube video, right?
yeah, and according to legend, one of the reasons why the Ukrainian women make all those Pisanki every year is that every Pisanki made strengthens the chains that hold the devil back from the world.
Ah.
And I feel that the world could maybe just use some stronger chains for the devil.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's part of your belief system, I say go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. We need that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, when you were telling the story about how the shells or the egg is used for medicinal purposes, I remembered, and I talk about my grandma uh, very often in this podcast. She was such an important influence in my life, and she used to collect the eggshells, and she would just collect them, and then when she had enough, she would just grind them like in a mortar, and then with that powder she would just like make like a little ball, and then she would use that as her base for her face, like the powder
Oh,
that she would. Yeah. And she always, like, people would come to her and say like, hey, how do you have such a beautiful skin? And she's like, my eggshells. Yeah.
nice. Yeah, so this is the first time I've heard of that, which is really cool. But I've heard of other uses for eggshell powder, like It can be a paint extender, or you can mix it into soil to improve the calcium content, especially if you're
Hmm.
growing something like tomatoes. Um, and at least one Nordic person told me that if you eat an egg, you have to crumple up the eggshell because otherwise witches will take it and use it as a boat.
As a boat.
As a boat. Mhm.
Wow, wow.
So,
And I see that there's the cosmic egg everywhere. Right? It's like all this meaning that we give to explain so many things that are probably not explainable otherwise. It's
yeah. Yeah, I was surprised to find the cosmic egg in so many, like, Renaissance Italian paintings.
hmm,
Often there's just an egg hanging from the ceiling.
hmm,
Um, and that's kind of based on, I mean, whatever. There are actual eggs, ostrich eggs, in the chandeliers in, I think, the Hagia Sophia,
hmm,
because it was believed that it would keep spiders away
hmm.
from making webs in the light fixtures, which I think is kind of fun. And it was also really important in Roman myth. There's maybe
Hmm.
some allusion to, I can't quite remember it now, but to Leda. Leda, if you don't remember from Greek mythology, Zeus comes to her in the form of a swan,
Uh-huh.
and she gives birth to the twins Castor and Pollux.
Hmm.
But maybe they came from an egg, or like the egg is bound up in the cult of that. And so it appears in some paintings with the Virgin Mary as a way of maybe like saying that she's as cool as Lita, or maybe cooler,
Hmm.
or maybe it's like the new age blotting out the old. I mean, you can really superimpose a
Wow.
lot of meaning onto the egg, which
Hmm.
makes it a its presence always feels mysterious but benign.
Yeah, no, it's impressive. Also, it's kind of like we as humans have been obsessed with eggs and the meaning, but also there is an obsession that you tell about in your book, and it's the obsession with collecting eggs,
Oh,
woology
yes.
or egg poaching, and it also tells a lot about who we are and who we are right now. I would like you to share with the audience some of those discoveries that you made, like this exclusively British men crime that it still happens nowadays, and how it connects with imperialism.
Yeah, so I think the UK is like ground zero for, let's say, idiosyncratic egg traditions. Uh, so come with me back to the Victorian era. Imagine that you're a little boy. Um, your mom does not want you collecting cigarette cards. So she says, "Okay, little boy, go outside and be in nature."
Huh.
And what the little boys started doing was climbing up trees and taking eggs and collecting them, blowing out the contents, and, kind of playing naturalist. And there were several different magazines that were like Boys Weekly or like Mad Magazine or something, but just exclusively devoted to this hobby of collecting eggs. And then some of the little boys who did this were really rich. Um, and collecting eggs gave way to collecting taxidermied animals, and it became a hobby of the wealthy and elite. And then uh, a group of women in the US decided that too many birds were being killed, and they successfully lobbied to have the wild bird trade for feathers or eggs banned.
Hmm.
And that law passed in 1918 in the US, but it did not
Hmm.
pass until the 40s or 50s in Great Britain.
Hmm.
So you have this kind of generation of outdoorsy young men who've been doing this hobby that was regarded as like a wholesome activity for a young boy to be doing. Um, but collection mania strikes. You know, today we have Pokemon and you can catch them all. Um, but with birds, you know, if you want to catch them all, you gotta go to Antarctica and you gotta get the emperor penguin eggs and bring them home. Um, and it was hard, I think, for the young men of Great Britain to give up that hobby. And this
Hmm.
is how, this long backstory is how Great Britain is the world leader in um, illegal egg collection.
Yeah, that is. Sorry for interrupting
Yeah.
your story because I stayed thinking about Pokemon, and I've just realized that it's the same thing that the British used to do, like go and capture nature,
Hmm.
like in various forms from everywhere in the world.
Yeah, there seems to be a big collection impulse in kids. My kid is now into Beyblades and can just talk with great verve about the many different kinds of Beyblades that they are and their different advantages. And I
Huh.
feel that it's sort of tapping into that kind of the primal need to collect that some people
Hmm.
feel. Um, so the people who are doing this now are not the wealthy elite. They
Hmm.
are blue collar guys who are out in nature and I think there's a little bit of cosplay to it. So, you know, I want to collect the rare eagle eggs, you know, the rare
Hmm.
golden eagle egg because, you know, then I will be like um a Victorian collector. And it's sort of a yearning for an age of empire where you could just go around and do that. Of
Hmm.
course, collecting eggs is really, really bad for birds. Killing the next generation. A lot of birds only lay one clutch of eggs, and if you take
Hmm.
the eggs, that's it. There's also the heist appeal. So if you think about what you need to do to collect, say, a golden eagle egg, first of all, you have to know where the golden eagles are, which means you have to be real observant. You got to be aware of when they migrate. You got to figure
Hmm.
out when, or I don't even know if they migrate, but you have to know kind of where they're flying and when.
Uh-huh.
You have to know when in the year they usually lay their eggs. Then you
Hmm.
have to find an individual eagle nest and you have to get to it, which means likely climbing up a really tall tree. Um, you got to be there at exactly the right time. If you
Hmm.
show up too early, there will be zero eggs. And if you show up too late, then the embryos will be so developed that you can't blow the egg out to get the
Hmm.
shell. You'll have to cut a big hole in it. Um, and then because it's illegal, you have to say put them in a tin and bury them in a particular spot so you can retrieve them later at a less suspicious time of year. And
Hmm.
once you have the egg at home, let's say you accomplish all of that and you have it at home, you can't have it out on display, really. So you got to find a good hiding place for it. And in addition, the guys doing this will make notes about like where and how it was collected. So um, this information in historic egg collections is an undertapped resource, but like a really rich data source. And um, but having when they arrest these guys, The only thing that's worked so far are custodial jail sentences. It used to be like a
Mm-hmm.
traffic ticket, but now you go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
One of the curious things is that if they seize your collection, they put it into wood chipper.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, because otherwise, the prize of having your eggs in a museum is like too tempting.
Right,
Um,
right.
and
And
I,
that's no, I think that's that's one of the most shocking facts about that, like, because we're also not talking about a collection of 10 or 100 eggs. This is thousands of eggs that these people get to collect, and it's years of work.
yeah,
So I guess that, yeah, it makes total sense what you're saying. If they know that their collection that they've been working on for so many years is now being kept at a museum, it's like the highest price possible.
I talked to the RSPB, which is it's kind of like the Audubon Society in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And they've found eggs in all kinds of places, like in purpose-made cabinets,
Hmm.
in someone's caravan. They have found them in like an insulated coffee pot, under a bed. I mean, really, in secret compartments, hidden in door frames, and so on and so forth. And for the people who do it, it can be quite sad because they get addicted.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's an addiction like many other addictions. It's compulsive. It's really hard to stop because it's
Hmm.
compulsive. And it's very damaging to wildlife, especially to birds that are endangered. But I think the tide is kind of turning.
Hmm.
If you think about it, getting banned in the 50s. And you can assume maybe that people were still doing it on the down low, for 20 years after that. That would take us to 1970. That makes, um, just like culturally, if you're born in 1970 and saw your dad doing it, you'd be in your 50s now. And
Hmm.
it's really a hobby for like a fit younger man. I
Hmm.
wouldn't wanna
Yeah.
be, like, clambering down slippery sea cliffs at
Hmm.
70, you know? So I think, in the same way that, like, our generation, I think, is smoking less than previous generations because it, like, took a while for the anti-smoking stuff to work, I think it's kind of the same way. So we may be seeing, this strange crime die out. Although
Hmm.
I was also assured that even when these crimes happen in other countries, which they occasionally do, it's usually British guys who've traveled abroad uh, to get the eggs.
Oh,
Um,
that's fascinating. That's fascinating. Um, you also mentioned this, and we were talking about this, about that imperial mindset. Also, that uh, if I can do it, I will do it, and that you told me that it's similar to probably what's going on right now in the U.S. Uh, with all the changes that are happening, that are maybe taking us back to a time where things were not very good for many people.
when more things were permitted, shall we say.
Hmm.
Yeah, interestingly, during Donald Trump's first administration, he tried to weaken the 1918 Migratory Bird Treaty. And I think he succeeded in weakening some protections, but
Hmm.
honestly, I didn't follow if they'd been restored or not during the Biden administration. I just thought it was interesting. I think that law may have been part of restricting like where you could drill because it
Mm-hmm.
would harm the birds. Or maybe there was legislation based on that. I've been meaning
Hmm.
to read up on that, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Interesting. That is
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's one of the oldest environmental protections and one of the most successful that we had. I think that story's kind of interesting too. It was two Boston ladies, um, Harriet Hemingway and Mina Hall, who were privileged. They were daughters of the elite, the very rich. And one of them read a newspaper article about um, birds being killed for women's hats.
Hmm.
And what they did was they made it cool to be into conservation. They took their literal blue book down from the wall. They made a list of all the women they thought would be in favor of this, and they invited them around to a series of fancy tea parties that were, you know, social events,
Uh-huh.
and talked to them about how all of the poor birds that were being killed, and it was really quite a lot of them, and they worked with milliners to make hats that didn't feature like entire taxidermied birds on them. And they made it cool, and they used social pressure to tank the feathered hat market in the US.
Wow.
Within within 30 years, they had gotten this federal law passed, but before that, they got a number of state laws passed.
Wow.
And interestingly, they called themselves the Audubon Society, not because Audubon was involved, but because they knew they needed a man's name on it in order to be taken seriously. And so they also had a prominent Boston ornithologist lead their organization officially. Like he was the president, but Harriet Hemingway was a lot of the soft power,
Wow.
shall we
Wow.
say? Yeah.
Wow. That that
Um,
that is a yeah, I didn't know that story like in that detail.
yeah.
And in 30 years, that's impressive. It's like there's a very early public relations program going
Yes.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was like the late 1890s so maybe even less than 30 years, maybe more like 20.
Hmm.
And within a few years of the founding, they had spread, and there were Audubon societies in other states.
Hmm.
Um, and it spread very quickly. And they had a lot of power. You know, Harriet Hemingway wrote a sternly worded letter to, I think, Teddy Roosevelt's wife because she'd worn a hat with feathers on it to the inauguration. They were dinging Queen Victoria in England over it as
Wow.
well. And she eventually agreed to give up feathers in her hats.
Hmm.
Um, and my understanding, I didn't report it out, but I think the RSPB, the group that was going after the egg criminals, I think the RSPB was started kind of in similar situations.
Okay. Okay.
So it's fun because it's a story of a small group of committed people changing the world and doing it at breakneck speed by leveraging their social capital,
Yeah.
which was, I mean, they had a lot of resources, but they leveraged their social capital and their very real generational wealth.
And all it's even more shocking to see that there are people trying to take that back after so many years. I was before this call, I was thinking about how powerful and how contradictory nostalgia can be, and all the things that can come from that. And this is a um, podcast. I wouldn't say about food. It's more about all the things that food makes us talk about. And
Yeah.
one of those things is the traditions that we have around food, and how the nostalgia help us connect with all those things. But it can also make us grasp into kind of like past situations where things were probably not fair for everybody, or were harming others, or animals, in this case birds.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, nostalgia for it's with nostalgia, it's always important to ask, um, what about this period am I nostalgic about?
Hmm.
Um, Very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would I like to eat depression pie again? Yeah, sure. Do I want to live through the depression again? No.
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's uh it's a very very interesting thing to think about. um I want to now take us back to the present times, um and talk about what you mentioned a little bit, touch upon the high egg prices of these days. And I know that you consider that they're not too expensive, that they could be more expensive. Why
Oh,
is that?
so much more expensive. You can still feed a crowd of 6 for like, I don't know what eggs are. I have a friend in Manhattan who told me they were going for $12 a dozen.
Hmm.
But what other kind of protein can you buy where you could feed 6 people for $12? You know, they're way
Yeah.
more expensive than they were, but they're not pricey yet. And so I like to tell people about the about Gold Rush era San Francisco. Basically, um, San Francisco's population like quintupled in a year during the gold rush, and city infrastructure couldn't keep up, and everybody was real hungry. And in particular, there was a shortage of protein. You had all these miners out in the field, out in the mine fields, doing hard physical labor, and they wanted protein. And for some reason, nobody could. I mean, there hadn't been time yet, but there were also some issues with scaling up chicken production in the
Hmm.
landscape there. And um, and so there was an egg shortage, a really epic egg shortage. And if you think about it, I mean, this gets back to that idea of nostalgia. We all want to eat grandma's pancakes or, grandma's cupcakes or
Hmm.
some other some other delicious confection that our ancestors made for us. And in order to make a lot of those things, you need eggs. And so eggs were going for like $1 an egg,
At that
to
time.
$3 an egg at that time, not adjusted for inflation in like 1848 money. So $36 in 1848 money is over $1,000 today.
Hmm.
And there's a great story about the dish called Hangtown Fry. Hangtown was a real place. I don't remember its other name, but it prominently had like a place to hang criminals
Hmm.
out front. And one day, a miner who'd struck it rich walked into the fanciest hotel in town, threw a bag of gold down on the table, and said, "Make me the most expensive thing on the menu." And so the chef made him oysters with scrambled eggs, because that's how expensive eggs were.
The
So,
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And
yeah.
how did this end? When what happened for the scarcity to come to an end?
Well, temporarily in the short term, people went out to the legendarily inhospitable Farallon Islands just outside the coast of San Francisco. They're
Hmm.
in shark infested waters. Their other name is the Devil's Teeth, um, because they used to chomp on ships.
Huh.
And they're just these rocks, basically covered with bird poop and like hundreds of thousands of seabirds.
Uh-huh.
And an enterprising pharmacist and his brother figured out that they could go out there at egg harvest time and just fill up on seabird eggs. And the ride was really treacherous. They lost half their load in the rowboat or whatever it was they took out there. When they got back, they sold those eggs to the tune of like $100,000 today.
Wow.
And Doc Robinson was like, "Yeah, I'm never doing that again." And he opened a theater where he delighted generations of theater goers with his impressions of New Englanders. He was from Maine originally, but within a week there were other people out there taking eggs from the island.
Hmm.
But there was a problem, and the problem is that they were taking great Muir eggs. These are eggs maybe like 1.5 times the size of a chicken egg. They're really beautiful. They've got kind of, they're like a beigey color, and then they have these dark
Mm-hmm.
brown squiggles all over them.
Mm-hmm.
And they have blood red yolks. And
Hmm.
these guys tasted just fine in baked goods. And if you had one that was absolutely fresh, you could eat it and be delighted. If you had one that was too old, it had a strong fishy taste, and people said that the flavor would linger in your mouth for months.
Sounds disgusting.
Yeah, so what these guys did was they'd send workers out to smash the eggs in one part of the island, and then the next day they could be assured that all of the eggs were
Mm.
absolutely fresh. And they
Hmm.
carted them back to the island, and like gang wars were fought over this island with guns and lots of shirty letters from the U.S. Coast Guard to the lighthouse keepers who lived on the island and who were at varying times complicit in the egg trade.
Hmm.
So that relieved the egg hunger in the short term.
Uh-huh.
But in the long term, I think the main problem, the main thing that was making egg prices high, was the scarcity of food. It was expensive to feed humans, and so what are you going to feed chickens?
Hmm.
And as city infrastructure got better and better, the price of food dropped, and there was a better understanding of how to raise free range chickens, how to kind of
Mm-hmm.
rotate the chickens around, help them forage for their own food. And then the invention of the egg incubator further helped. And it was invented by somebody in Petaluma. And then
Uh-huh.
Petaluma became one of the world's great, it was known as the egg basket of the.
Wow. Wow. Uh, that's a story that I think it encapsulates very well how important the egg is for us as a way of sustaining uh, our society and us. Um, I don't know if you mentioned this in the book or maybe I read it somewhere else, but the Egyptians had already discovered how to
Yes.
incubate and how to make them hatch like in mass. And I think
Yes.
there's like an information that it was like something like 10,000 eggs per day that they were able to
Like
hatch.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, the egg hatching, synthetic egg hatching is kind of complicated because it requires an exact temperature, fairly exact temperature, and a fairly high humidity.
Hmm.
Um, and a chicken's butt is just only so big. And so the Egyptians figured out how to make these conical ovens that
Huh.
were fired with dung. And one of the genius things they figured out is that you could hold an egg to the temperature of your eyelid. The eyelid is some of the most sensitive skin on the body, and that helped you know if the egg was at the right temperature. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
also eggs have to be rotated so that the embryo stays free of the shell.
Hmm.
And so they developed a method to do that, and the Europeans didn't learn about it until the late 1700s. Um, but it was too expensive
Hmm.
in fuel. Egypt's a lot warmer than France.
Right.
And so it took figuring out how to use something called a coal-fired mechanical regulator, I think,
Uh-huh.
was the big innovation. And
Okay.
once they figured out how to do that, then suddenly you could hatch a lot more chicks. There were still
Okay.
problems, like um, farmers really would prefer to only raise the female chicks because they're
Mm.
the ones who are going to give the eggs, and also most of the meat. And so then there was like an advancement in chicken sexing that came from Japan.
Uh,
And um, and somebody in Petaluma like took a lesson and opened up their own school.
mm.
And there's of course some racism here. It was like, why couldn't the the Japanese immigrants who knew how to do it open their own school? And the answer is like racism.
Hmm.
But figuring out how to sex the chicks was a huge development. Um,
Wow.
and that is one of the things that's allowed like the vast chicken sheds of today.
Mm. And now we have chicken and eggs are the I think is the most successful animal in history. There's no other animal who has had as many individuals as the chicken has today.
Oh, surely not. I mean, chickens outnumber humans about 3 to 1 at any given time, and like we're killing them at an incredible clip. In
Yeah.
fact, the biomass of chickens on Earth outweighs the biomass of all other bird species combined.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Impressive. Well, Lizzie, um, I think that this is it. I really enjoyed the conversation. I mean, we could
Me
we
too.
could keep going for hours. Who would have thought that you could talk so much about birds and eggs? I bet that I mean, what is the longest that you've spent talking about birds and chickens and
I mean,
eggs?
if book research counts, about 3 years.
Conversaciones is a podcast produced by Go Global Media, a consulting company creating connections between Latin America and the world. If you like this episode, follow us on Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube, and share it with your friends. Thank you for listening. We'll meet again with a new episode of Conversaciones Podcast.